Robin Hood Radio presents Stage Right or Not with Michele Willens. Michele is a longtime journalist and herself is a published playwright of several theatrical works. She's a frequent contributor to the Huffington Post, Daily Beast, and the Atlantic websites.
Well, welcome to Unlucky Week number 13 of No Stage Left, our name for the foreseeable future. As usual, I will discuss any news from the theater world, report on what I saw that hopefully can still be watched, and alert you to what's coming up this week. The overall theme, once again, is color, and it's not white. Virtually every theater, large and small, has momentarily moved past the corona crisis to deal with race, and perhaps it's about time. As I mentioned last week, many events are being canceled to honor the Black Lives Matter movement, and that tsunami has continued. But it's also taken an additional little turn. Companies are seeking what they call budget justice. I can't pretend to understand all the details, but here is one example of the many notices that I recently received. This one was from the Signature Theater, which writes, "We believe investments in cultural and service organizations are true investments in the life and well-being of the people of New York. There is financial apportioning going on beyond supporters' donations and support, and the theaters are clearly lobbying for a larger piece of the city's pie." Primary Stages also put out a similar notice, followed by generous suggestions of books to read about race and even some non-theatrical organizations to donate to. What remains remarkable is how so many companies are using this virus-induced hiatus to consider their own policies and processes. I listened to a conversation with Oscar Eustis, the artistic director of the Public, arguably the most progressive in the country. Don't forget where Hamilton started. Still, Eustis sounded self-reflective, almost asking for forgiveness. "I am spending a lot of time listening to my staff and artists," he said. "How can we be more democratic? How can we do this better?" He also admitted the public has been the beneficiary of what he termed white privilege. So he asked, "Are we part of the problem?" That sentiment is a common one. Meanwhile, the streaming opportunities abound. The most notable of the past week was the first edition of New York Times Offstage, a 90-minute combo of conversation and performance, looking back at the first half of this truncated theater season and the occasional sneak peek at those that didn't quite get up in time. The first 45 minutes, following a welcome from Sarah Jessica Parker and Matthew Broderick, who were supposed to be on Broadway now, is a discussion moderated by the Times' Wesley Morris with three Broadway artists, including Adrienne Warren, the star of the Tina Turner musical, and the near shoo-in for the Tony, by the way. Her most moving words were not of postponed awards, but rather, quote, "I am not thinking about Broadway these days, I'm thinking what I can do to help." Later, we heard from hot young writer Jeremy O. Harris, the man behind Slave Play. He pleaded for more affordable ticket prices. People who look like me can't afford $200 seats, he said. Clearly, his playwriting will continue. "Rage is running through me, fresh and anew," he warned. We got to hear a number from the revival of Company, which was also supposed to be on Broadway by now. And Mira Winningham, one of the stars of Girl from the North Country, sang the Bob Dylan song Forever Young, something few of us are feeling these days. We listened to a monologue by Mary Louise Parker from The Sound Inside, for which she was the frontrunner to win a dramatic Tony. This is a debut episode, apparently, of Offstage, so I'll let you know when the next is up. I enjoyed watching something called Create Theater, which aims to present original works, always a good idea in good times or bad. The first reading was of Bird at the Window by Barbara Kelly, which was a rather compelling four-person piece about two couples, a tragic loss of a child, a theme I must say that is becoming a bit of a dramatic cliché, over a short period of time. The reading was well directed, the actors virtually moving from kitchen to living room to the woods outside. Budding playwrights take notice. This is an interesting company. Shakespeare fans also take notice. You have 2 more days to catch Patrick Page's wonderful performance as Macbeth on Plays in the House. That one, a free benefit, so to speak, for the Actors Fund is on YouTube. What I missed was Theater of War's take on King Lear. Hey, you can only watch so much at the same hour, but it can be found, I hope, on its site or YouTube. That company, Theater of War, has been zooming excellent works. The Oedipus Project was a pure delight. Yes, even featuring one of the darkest families in theater history. But starring Oscar Isaac and Frances McDormand, it can be rewatched on Wednesday. Just go to the Theater of War's site for that. What else is coming up? Well, let's start with tonight, Monday, when the Red Bull Company streams a reading of one of its most entertaining productions, The Government Inspector, a farce dealing with bureaucracy run amok. No, not ours. I reviewed the Red Bull production and found it hilarious and fast-paced, and it stars the pandemically ubiquitous Michael Urie. Hopefully that will be available on YouTube after. A work called Scraps should also be checked out on YouTube. This was produced by and won awards for Los Angeles' Matrix Theater a few years back. Subject matter? A family dealing with the painful aftermath of a black teenager being shot by a white policeman. Anna Devere Smith's totally unique Fires in the Mirror about the 1991 riots in Crown Heights is currently available to stream on YouTube as well. A one-woman tour de force, Smith uses the actual words of victims, witnesses, and those left behind. And Spike Lee, a busy man these days, has transferred a play called Passover to the small screen. Written by Antoinette Nwandu, it was performed by the Steppenwolf Company in Chicago. You can find Lee's adaptation on Amazon. A very different offering can be found by checking out Generation Women. Register and Zoom tomorrow at 7 p.m. for its reading called Women of a Certain Age on Getting Older. 6 generations will be enacted by a nice collection of actresses. I'm sure that will also be available somewhere should you miss it Tuesday. Now, it seems I often end on an obituary of note, and this week it was for the actress, Mary Pat Gleason. She's recognizable from hundreds of TV show roles, but she may have played her most important one in telling her own story. A few seasons back, Gleason performed a one-woman piece at the Vineyard Theater called Stopping Traffic, in which she spoke about her lifelong battle with bipolar. Well, that is now used as a teaching tool at the Mayo Clinic. So, Jill, it seems she should get a posthumous Tony for that one.
All right, that's fair.
Who knows?
I was just going to ask about that. Are you? What are you hearing in terms of activities? Not quite the right word. Like what's going on in these so-called wrong field, but smoke-filled rooms?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I've been meaning to ask a producer friend who's behind Hadestown. The last I heard was it really depends on the show. If investors are willing to wait it out, they're not losing money, they're not making money, but they're not losing it. If they're willing to wait it out, and if the theaters themselves are willing not to, I guess, be charging whatever they charge, enormous. I mean, they need the shows too. I think everybody is on hold. Everybody seems to be, pardon the cliche, in this together. Sarah Jessica and Matthew claim their shows coming up in the spring, will be in the spring. The biggest issue has to be the scheduling on all these companies, almost even more so for the little ones like the public,
right,
that had workshops planned, that have a whole full schedule planned. And those are short, those aren't Broadway shows that can move in and stay as long as they make money. These are shows that get like a 3-month run, and then the next one comes in. And so there's just a lot of
But can you begin to do workshops?
Yes,
or can you begin workshopping? It would seem that we're getting to a point where there's more ability to do that than there has been in the past.
Absolutely. Matter of fact, I talked to one producer of one that was supposed to workshop at the Public, and it's a a show that should be a great success and get some attention. But that's gone, that workshop. But apparently there are discussions about doing it online, whether it's for the public or just for themselves. And I told you I'd heard that Music Man, that they're rehearsing online. I'm sure, and a lot of the shows like Girl from the North Company shows are re-rehearsed. They keep in touch. The staff, and the cast get together every week and they replay parts of it. I mean, nobody wants to start completely over. So,
no, and again, I would just think that there are guidelines in place now. There are guidelines, there are habits, and there are certainly things that you in the same way that you rehearse an understudy. There are things that you can begin to do in person if you are so inclined. And I would just, and I just wonder, part of
in person, I don't know. That I haven't heard of. I mean, sure, you can sit in living rooms that are big living rooms or big homes, 6 feet apart,
or big or decent sized spaces. If you were putting together something, you can go from room to room. I'm just saying that there is now, 3 months on, some room for think, and I just wondered if there was any. Obviously you only hear about these things after they've been fully thought through and started. And so I was just wondering if there were talks.
Yeah, I haven't quite heard that yet. But, I think everything's being looked at. The fact that Spike Lee found this play, which was done a few years back in Chicago, and they're not redoing it. They're just, he is literally, I guess he filmed it, and then they're going to put it on to be streamed. So every possible way to get something up. In an odd way, it's a very good time for new. That's why I was talking about that create theater thing. That's kind of an exciting thing for young and old. Any frustrated playwright suddenly has places to go, to have their work put up for nothing, and they get their friends and supporters to, so it's a whole new way. I mean, they're stepping up like crazy, and it's been very admirable. Bringing back shows like the Anna Devere Smith ones, why not? I mean, that's sort of a no-brainer. But the bigger stuff, the Broadway stuff, I think most people are talking to 2021 at this point. This week the Philharmonic. I mean, I think basically everything has been postponed by now. The things that are opening are museums slowly, including in your area. So, and outdoor venues like you have in your area, that's very possible. I wouldn't be surprised to see some of that opening. There's a company I talked to in Los Angeles that's thinking of using their parking lot, getting the cars out of the parking lot and moving and putting in chairs and doing their productions there. So all kinds of creativity, trying to replace the kind we're used to.
Stage Right or Not with Michele Willens, produced in the studios of Robin Hood Radio, robinhoodradio.com.